So ultimately, we're going to follow a procedure to set up the experiment to look something like this. We've got our tank, we've got a clip holding a tube. The tube is coming over to the tank, and it's then connected to the pump. And we've got a lid on top with a moisture sensor connected, the wires, and the IoT maker carrier over here. My fan happens to be mounted on the top in this example, but yours probably will not be mounted on like that. So the first step is actually we need to set up the moisture sensor on the tank and connect the tubing. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. We can see a little bit closer what that looks like on the tank. So to start out, we need this guy right here, and we need to connect up this pump, and we need to connect up this moisture sensor. So we'll start with the moisture sensor. This metal bracket is going to be the thing that mounts the moisture sensor down in here. And then it'll be as far as we can sticking down into the tank. So a couple things to note. We don't want this side where all the components are to be touching the metal bracket. And we don't want these leads or jumper wires coming out of the back of the connector here to be touching the metal. So we'll get this put down in, and then we'll snug up these little nylon nuts and bolts right here to get the moisture sensor installed. First, I set them in kind of loosely and get it just barely snug. And then I turn this over to the point where this guy is making sure that the leads are not touching the metal of this bracket, just about like right there. And away we go. So these are just snug down by hand. And so the moisture sensor will straighten it up a little bit like that. And then it should be sticking out like that. So we're just about ready to put this on. What we're going to do now is we're going to get some tubing. Okay. This tubing, we're going to connect up to the discharge side of the pump. The pump discharge side is right here. The inlet side is on the bottom. We want to make sure that this is down in the water. Most of these tanks will have this pump mounted on the side, glued on the side. If yours isn't, just make sure that it's stuck down in like that. So one of the things that is a little easier to do is to have this tube run down through the side port here, okay, about 5 or 6 inches sticking down in there. And then we connect up the discharge of the pump there. And we take this pump wire and we come up through the smaller hole on the top of the lid. With all that set, essentially what we're doing is getting the pump mounted into the tank. So we have a tank with a lid, moisture sensor, tube, and jumper wires ready to go. Now we take this tube and we want to connect it to this beaker and just make sure that it's clipped right about there. There is a siphon effect that could happen if this tube is down too far, which would then end up having the water in the tank come back down and fill this tank automatically. We do have some check valves that we sometimes use and then just clip valves for this kind of tubing, but in this case today we're not going to use them. One of the things I like to do in just diagnosing and setting up is I like to just go ahead and check that my pump is actually working. So I'll go ahead and take my black to my negative and my red to the positive, and I can hear the pump running. Now, I don't have any water in here. If I had water, I would see some water coming out of here. But that is the initial setup for the tank.